Let's turn to the crisis in the Middle East, or the conflict, I should say. Trump has warned Hamas to give back all 20 hostages in order to bring an end to the war in Gaza. He wrote, "Tell Hamas to immediately give back all 20 hostages, not 2 or 5 or 7, and things will change rapidly. It will end." He, of course, posted this on his social media network, Truth Social. Look, we all want to get those hostages back so desperately. It's been nearly 700 days since October 7, 2023. Joe, do you think this warning, there have been warnings in the past, is this one going to cut through?
Well, it might. I mean, Hamas is looking for the exit ramp here. I mean, there's still about 14,000 Hamas fighters, according to the sources that I see. And, of course, Gaza, of course, has been flattened like a parking lot. And, you know, and he's trying to give Netanyahu here, he's trying to throw him a bone. If he can get those hostages out of there, that will satisfy his critics. And keep in mind that there are a lot of people in Israel who are very angry with Netanyahu for the length of the war and what they're being asked to do right now. And the thing that keeps them all together is, what about the hostages? Is it 20, 30, 40? I mean, how many dead bodies do they have around? And the 20 who are supposedly alive, you know, they're probably at the end of their tether. And of course, it's very clear to me in the early days of the attack, the Hamas attack on Israel and the Israeli response, that the Israelis probably were going to give up the hostages. That is, they were going to factor them into their own death count, because you can't not defeat Hamas for 20, 30, 40 people. I mean, that would sort of subtract from the actual victory. You know, at the end of the day, the Israelis have won this, and they've won it very well. The problem is you know, they're on the verge of losing the peace. That is, no one's going to believe what got them going in the first place. And of course, if Netanyahu doesn't survive, his government doesn't survive this war, then it means nothing to them. So, you know, we've come to the point now where we're trying to make some meaning here. We need a narrative at the end, and it would really be great if Hamas just did something important, noble right now, and that's
how likely is that?
And said this.
Really, how likely is it that Hamas will do something noble?
Between Zero and Buckley's, they're not going to do anything like that. There might be someone at the end there who sees, like the Syrian guy who wound up as the terrorist who wound up as the head of Syria, somebody who's looking for a little bit of an exit strategy here to look, I don't mean great, but statesman-like, you know. Well, you know, we have to give up the hostages because we're at the end of our tether, and it's, you know, that kind of thing. But Hamas has played this very badly. Look, these are gangsters. And, you know, the problem with the Israelis from day one is they haven't been engaged in a war. They've been fighting people who are home invaders. These guys just are criminals. And the idea of treating them like military people is a bit of a joke. But, you know, at the end of the day, you got to deal with somebody. And so, you know, there's no one left to deal with. And there are people in America and other places in Israel who want those hostages back. As I say, I doubt many of them are still alive. And if they are, Gabriella, they're in very bad shape.
No, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Look, finally, I want to ask you about what is happening in the United States. And Trump says that he will be sending the National Guard to Chicago to tackle crime, while, of course, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and other state leaders remain adamant that National Guard troops are not welcome in Chicago. Here's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson arguing against why the National Guard should not be brought in, and also claims that shootings, well, they're just going to continue.
Shootings will continue as long as this presidential administration continues to put politics over people.
Joe, what are your thoughts on what's been happening over there?
Well, look, that mayor, Brandon Johnson, is one of the most unpopular people on the planet Earth. He's got an approval rating of about 23. And, you know, I got a beef to pick here, Gabriella. I was born and raised in Chicago. And we've had very high homicide counts. When I was born, there were 1944, there were 244 deaths in Chicago. There are 253 so far this year. But, you know, when I was a kid, the people who died were, it was gang wars, you know, like the Valentine Days Massacre and the occasional crazy serial killer. But today, what we're talking about, what happened, you know, over the weekend, I think 64 were wounded and 7 or 8 were murdered. These are drive-by shootings. These are just people who are out of control. And keep in mind here, when we're talking about Chicago, we're talking about 2.7 million people in 77 neighborhoods. Greater Chicago is 9.7 million people. So we're just talking about the South Side and the West Side, and these places have been taken over by drug warfare and gangs, and just watch a Spike Lee movie or two to get the idea of what's going on. So President Trump's on the right thing here. But people can't disagree with the mayor too much, because most of the jobs in Chicago are patronage jobs. That is, the mayor appoints the police chief, fire chief, and all the rest of them. And if you want to keep your job, you got to shut up publicly. But I'll tell you this. I know a lot of Americans, a lot of Chicagoans, and they are quite happy to see the federal guard. Now, the courts say they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be processing, apprehending people or processing and all the rest of it. But I think there'd be a lot of Chicagoans who wouldn't mind seeing some peace in the street. Yeah, it's a tough place. I grew up in a tough neighborhood, but we all made it. But look, that mayor there, and of course the governor, Pritzker, who's down in Springfield, he just loves the idea of picking a fight with President Trump because he's aiming for the White House. In fact, everybody who picks a fight with Trump is aiming for the White House.
Always.
America's that kind of place.
It is. Professor Joe Siracusa, thank you so much for your time. Lovely to speak with you.
Okay, thank you.